Daniel stood in the middle of a busy road, crying because he had just given away the last money he had in the world. And the worst part, 10 minutes later, he missed the opportunity that could have changed his life forever. People who saw him that day called him a fool. But what happened 3 days later would leave an entire city speechless. A long time ago, in the crowded streets of Lagos, there lived a young man named Daniel. Daniel was 26 years old, quiet, hard-working, the kind of man life had tested too early. He lived with his mother and younger sister in a small one-room apartment behind an old mechanic workshop. Every morning before sunrise, he woke up to the sound of metal banging, loud generators, and buses shouting for passengers outside. Life had never been easy for Daniel. After graduating from university 2 years earlier, he had searched endlessly for work. Interview after interview, rejection after rejection. Sometimes they told him he lacked experience. Other times, they simply never called back. But no rejection hurt more than watching his mother pretend she wasn't hungry so her children could eat. Daniel noticed everything. The smaller portions, the forced smiles, the nights she drank water just to sleep. And every time he saw it, something inside him broke a little more. So when he finally received an interview invitation from one of the biggest companies in the city, it felt like hope had finally remembered his name. This was not just another interview. This was survival. If he got this job, everything would change. Rent would be paid. His sister would return to school. His mother would finally rest. For the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to believe life might become better. The interview was scheduled for 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. And for 3 days straight, Daniel prepared like his life depended on it. 'Cause it did. He polished his only pair of shoes until they reflected light. He ironed the same white shirt again and again. He practiced interview questions late into the night while his sister pretended to be the interviewer and laughed every time he became nervous. Even his mother smiled more that week. "You will get this job," she told him softly. Daniel wanted to believe her. But deep down, fear remained. Because life had disappointed him too many times before. The night before the interview, heavy rain fell across the city. The roof leaked again. Water dripped into bowls scattered around the room. Daniel barely slept. At 4 in the morning he was already awake. He dressed carefully, checked his documents 3 times, then stood quietly near the door. His mother walked up to him and adjusted his collar gently. "You were not raised to fail," she whispered. Those words stayed with him. As Daniel stepped into the cold morning air, the city was already alive. Bus conductors shouted loudly. Street hawkers arranged goods along the roadside. Cars fought through traffic like angry animals. Daniel held his document folder tightly against his chest and checked the time on his phone. 7:12 a.m. If traffic behaved normally, he would arrive early. And for once, things actually seemed to be going well. Until the bus broke down. At first, the passengers complained casually. Then smoke began rising from the engine. The driver cursed loudly and jumped out. Daniel felt panic spread through his body. He checked the time again. 7:48 a.m. His heart pounded. Without waiting, he grabbed his folder and began running toward the next junction. Rainwater splashed beneath his shoes. Sweat rolled down his face despite the cold air. Every second mattered now. He finally found another bus. But traffic had become worse. Completely frozen. Daniel stared helplessly through the window as cars refused to move. 8:26 a.m. His breathing became heavier. He imagined the interview panel already seated, already waiting, already judging him. Then suddenly, he heard crying. First he ignored it. But the sound continued. Weak, desperate. Daniel turned toward the roadside. And there, sitting near a drainage gutter, was an elderly woman. Her clothes were soaked from rain. One of her slippers was broken. And beside her lay a small basket of oranges scattered across muddy water. People walked past her without stopping. Some stared briefly. Most ignored her completely. The woman struggled to breathe. "Please," she whispered weakly. "My chest." Daniel looked away immediately. "Oh, not today." He could not afford distractions. Not now. He checked the time again. 8:41 a.m. If he left the bus immediately and walked fast enough, he might still make it. The old woman coughed violently. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Daniel closed his eyes tightly. Then he remembered something his mother once told him when he was younger. If kindness only exists when life is easy, then it is not kindness at all. Daniel opened his eyes again. And before his fear could stop him, he stepped off the bus. Passengers looked at him like he was insane. Even the conductor shouted, "Hey, your stop never reach." But Daniel ignored him. He rushed toward the woman. Her hands trembled badly. People continued passing as though she were invisible. Daniel knelt beside her carefully. "Can you stand?" he asked. The woman shook her head weakly. "My medicine," she whispered. Daniel looked around desperately. A small pharmacy stood across the road. "How much?" he asked softly. The woman mentioned the price. And Daniel froze. Because the money she needed was almost everything he had left. Transport fare, food money, emergency cash, everything. Daniel stared at the notes inside his wallet. Then at the time, 8:49 a.m. His interview was across town. If he spent this money now, there was a strong chance he would not even reach the company building. For several seconds, he could not think. The city noise faded around him. It felt as though life itself was watching to see what he would choose. Opportunity or humanity. Daniel swallowed hard. Then slowly, he handed over the money. All of it. The pharmacist gave him the medicine. Daniel helped the woman sit properly while she took it. A few minutes later, her breathing became calmer. Tears filled her eyes. "You gave me everything you had," she whispered. Daniel forced a tired smile. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Not really. Because when he checked the time again, it was already 9:17 a.m. He was late. Very late. And suddenly the reality hit him. Daniel stood slowly in the middle of the roadside while rain dripped from his clothes. People moved around him. Cars honked endlessly. But all he could think was, "It's over." Months of preparation. Years of struggle. Just like that. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt anger toward himself. Why had he stopped? Why had he cared? What if kindness had just destroyed the only chance his family had left? The old woman watched him quietly. Then she said something strange. "Not every loss is truly a loss." Daniel barely reacted. He was too exhausted to care. He nodded politely and walked away. By the time he finally reached the company building, the interview had ended. The receptionist looked at him sympathetically. "I'm sorry," she said. "They already finished." Daniel stood there silently, his clothes still wet, his shoes dirty, his folder trembling slightly in his hands. Everything inside him collapsed. He thanked her quietly and turned away. Outside the building, he sat alone near the gate for almost an hour, watching successful-looking people walk past him, laughing, joking, living lives that felt impossibly far away from his own. When Daniel finally returned home that evening, his mother immediately understood. He hadn't gotten the job. She said nothing. She simply hugged him tightly, and somehow, that hurt even more. That night Daniel could not sleep. He kept replaying everything in his mind. Interview, the rain, the woman, the money, choice. And slowly, regret began eating him alive. For the next 3 days, Daniel avoided everyone. He barely spoke. Even hope itself felt embarrassing now. Then on Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on the door. Daniel opened it slowly and froze. Standing outside was a man in a dark suit. Behind him, was a black luxury car. "Are you Daniel?" the man asked politely. Daniel nodded cautiously. The man smiled. "My employer would like to see you." Daniel's confusion deepened. "Who?" The man stepped aside slightly, and inside the car sat the old woman. But she looked completely different now. Elegant, confident, powerful. Daniel's eyes widened. The woman smiled gently. "Get in," she said. Daniel's heart pounded as the car drove through the city. Nothing made sense anymore. Finally, they arrived at a massive office building. The same company. The same place where Daniel had missed his interview. Employees greeted the old woman respectfully as she walked inside. Some even bowed slightly. Daniel felt dizzy. Then the woman turned toward him calmly. "My name is Mrs. Adeyemi," she said. "I founded this company 32 years ago." Daniel stared at her speechlessly. "I don't understand." Mrs. Adeyemi smiled faintly. "I was not testing you," she said. "At least, not intentionally." She looked out the window briefly. "That morning my driver had an accident nearby. I decided to walk while waiting for assistance. Then my chest condition suddenly became worse." She looked back at Daniel. "Hundreds of people passed me. Nobody stopped." Daniel remained silent. "But you did." Her voice softened. "And you gave up something important. For someone you believed could do nothing for you." Daniel lowered his eyes slowly. Mrs. Adeyemi walked toward a large office table and placed a file before him. Inside was an employment letter. Not for the position he originally applied for. Something higher. Something better. Daniel looked up in shock. Mrs. Adeyemi smiled. "Skills can be taught," she said. "But character is rare." Daniel's hands trembled. He could barely breathe. For the first time in years. His future no longer looked dark. Weeks later, Daniel's life completely changed. His mother no longer skipped meals. His sister returned to school. And the small room behind the mechanic workshop became a memory they no longer had to survive inside. But Daniel never forgot the lesson that changed his life forever. 'Cause sometimes, the biggest opportunities in life do not arrive disguised as success. Sometimes, they arrive as a difficult choice. And the truth is, the world often watches what people do.